Welcome to Pod Save America Live.
I can't get this microphone to be in the position that I want.
Lovett's back. He's just trying to figure out
how to
keep his microphone from killing him.
It looks like one of those Boston Robotics, like dogs. It really does.
Yeah, this is like that Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
You know? The one.
Anyway, I know this is why you tuned in. With us, as always, Priyanka asking the questions. Got Elijah here.
On the
Nars
ones and
behind the
twos.
camera.
Nar.
You know, we're ready to go.
We're ready. I'm in a mood.
He's in a mood.
You're in a mood.
He needs to caffeinate.
What are you drinking, Lovett?
He hasn't caffeinated today.
Is that your usual?
It's
the first question of the stream.
Venti-sized asshole. Howard Schultz's coffee.
This is the rare quad for me.
Paid promo by Howard Schultz or
No.
We don't do that. Okay.
Or from Dunkin' Donuts.
All right, we'll kick it off with some 2020 questions.
Sure.
First up, we have one about ranked choice voting. Should we use it in the primaries? What are the pros, cons? What are your thoughts?
What do you think, Lovett?
I'm very interested in ranked choice voting. I think that...
Should you tell people what it is? Tell people what it is.
So basically, ranked choice voting, so in a crowded field, right? This actually just happened in the city of Chicago. It's not just about Democratic primaries in terms of the presidential primaries. The basic idea is like, let's say there are 3 or 4 candidates in the field, right? And you have a favorite who you really like, but that person's like an underdog. And then you're forced to have this question, do I vote for the person I really, really want to win? Or am I strategic with my vote? And because I want to stop another person who has a better chance of winning from winning. So I'm going to vote for someone I don't like as much to keep someone I really don't like from winning, even though the person I love the most is a person that I wish I could vote for, but they don't have as big of a chance.
A real-life example of this and what led the state of Maine to move to ranked choice voting was Paul LePage, who was the governor of Maine. He was like the Trump of Maine before Trump was president. Crazy guy. Only won with 40-something% of the vote the first time and still under 50% of the vote the second time. And they're like, how can this be that someone who the majority of people in Maine don't want to be in office because he's so crazy continues to win? We should move towards ranked choice voting.
Right. And so the basic idea would be everybody would vote for their first choice, but then they would also mark their second choice, their third choice, their fourth choice, all the way down. And then there's a vote. The person who does the worst, they're knocked out. And then all the person who voted for them first or gave them their first choice position, they get to vote then for their second choice person. And then you basically add it up. The idea, the fundamental goal of ranked choice voting is to say, in a crowded field, we want the person that the most people want to win to ultimately win the election. The simplest version would be if you had an election with 2 Democrats and a Republican, and 60% split their vote between the 2 Democrats and the Republican got 40%, you would want a system that said, hold on a second. Even though the Republican got the most votes in this race, the majority of the people preferred a Democrat. So let's say if one of those Democrats had dropped out because they came in third, where would all the people that had voted for that Democrat go? And the majority of their votes would have gone for the other Democrat. So it's a more democratic way of choosing someone in a crowded field, and it leads to something called what they call instant runoffs. So basically you cast the vote, you slowly knock off the people doing the worst, you add up the second and third and fourth place votes up the kind of march up the chain, right? And so you're left with kind of 2 people facing off, and the person who has the most support ultimately wins.
Yeah, the idea is the majority's voice should carry the day, right? Like that we should have a candidate that is amenable to the majority of voters.
Yeah,
right?
And this isn't like a partisan thing, right? There are places where this would help Republicans, places where it would help Democrats. I just think it's a fairer way to deal with a crowded field.
Yeah.
It would be fascinating.
And the other thing it would replace in some instances is a runoff election.
Yes.
So we know that where there was a runoff election, we remember in the state of Georgia for Secretary of State after Stacey Abrams lost the governorship there, that we thought maybe the Democratic and the Democratic candidate for Secretary of State could win in the runoff. The problem with runoffs is they're very costly, and a lot of times people don't show up. And it's hard to get them to show up for a runoff election because they just showed up a month ago and like they want a second election. Like
So you just have the runoff built into the ballot, right?
Right.
All the people voted. So basically all a runoff is a chance for the people who voted for someone who's no longer in the race to basically vote again, right? Without all the complexity and cost of running a new election in which there's less turnout. So basically you just say to everybody, hey, imagine there was a runoff. Who would you vote for? That's really all ranked choice voting does. It makes a runoff happen instantaneously. And it's a really smart thing. And if we had one actually in the Democratic primary, it'd be really fascinating to see what would happen. Because one thing that you would see is less of a desire for individuals to kind of stake out some unassailable personal space, but rather kind of compete not only for their votes, but the votes of others, right? It would become a much more collaborative and...
Well, it cuts down on negative campaigning as well, because you don't want to attack a candidate whose supporters you may need to win over.
Yeah, you want to be everybody's second choice too, you know?
It's also, by the
Story
way...
of my life.
Because the Iowa caucuses, by the way...
Always a bridesmaid.
Because the Iowa caucuses work in some kind of similar way, where like you need to hit the threshold of 15% to be viable in a caucus, you need to hit at least 15%, or your supporters have to go to another candidate. It's one reason why Democratic candidates in Iowa, they call it Iowa nice, but Democratic candidates in Iowa tend not to attack each other too much, because you don't want to piss off other people's supporters in Iowa, because you'll at some point need them to caucus for you.
And then Iowa nice is obviously going to be distinct from Minnesota nice, which is when you're very nice publicly, but then when you shut that door, you go crazy.
Pass.
All right. This next question is about the crowded field as well. It's March of 2019. We have new candidates, Democratic candidates for president, basically weekly at this point. For someone who's skeptical of polling data after the majority of major outlets got 2016 so wrong, what is the utility of scrutinizing polls this early into the 2020 presidential campaign with seriousness? Should we be looking at them? How should we be reading them?
I think if you are looking at polls at this stage to predict who's going to win the nomination, you should be spending your time elsewhere.
Yes.
But I do think, that said, I think that polls are valuable. I would also say that like the polls in 2016, national polls, again, were pretty close. We had polls in a couple of Midwestern states that were clearly off, and there was a problem there. But overall, a lot of the polling was correct, and the polling in 2018 was quite correct, except for public pollsters are still having a problem figuring out how to poll Florida, though the private pollsters on the Democratic and Republican side both had that race much closer than the public polls. But that was sort of the glaring example in 2018 of polls getting it wrong. Like most of the 2018 polls were largely correct.
I would say also people tend to care about how correct polls are only when they are... So a poll being off by 1%, meaning the difference between Hillary Clinton winning and losing Pennsylvania, is held up as a greater failure of polling than polling being off by, say, 3 or 4%, say in Virginia, where Democrats actually outperformed the polls by a huge amount, but because it didn't go against the outcome, people don't care about it. So keep in mind that we care about polls being off by a point or two when the wrong thing, when they get it wrong by who wins, but that's actually not a bigger error, it's just a bigger impact.
And again, the danger here is when you take one poll and freak out over the numbers in a single poll, right? The more polls you read, the more polls you look at and sort of average together, the firmer the ground you're standing on. And so I think like if there's one if there's one poll showing, you know, Joe Biden in the lead in Iowa and Bernie in second, blah, 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 you can't really take it seriously. If there's 10 polls that shows him in the lead, well, what does that tell you? That tells you if the race were held today, which it's not going to be held for another 11 months. It was held today.
That's like 2 presidents from now.
Right. Then, you know, Joe Biden would be in the lead. That's all it tells you. It's interesting for sort of analyzing where the field is right now, candidate strengths and weaknesses. I'm always interested in polls that ask Democratic voters, what are you looking for in a candidate? What qualities are you looking for? What issues do you care about? Like, I think those are all really good polls. I think horse race polls, who's up and who's down at this stage, aren't as useful.
I would also say, too, even if we knew, like even if you did a poll of all voters and you got the exact breakdown of where all voters are right now in the Democratic primary, even then, for each of us as individuals evaluating candidates, it has very little value. Why are you reading polls? What are you hoping to understand? What is it teaching you? Are you trying to understand Democratic electorates? Are you trying to understand other people and not yourself, right? Like, why do we care about polls? none of us right now are deciding on resource questions for various campaigns, right? Like, keep in mind that, like, the culture has elevated polling as to be something important. It gets way too much attention. It's interesting. It's good to know. Maybe it'll help you decide down the road between you want to maybe be behind somebody you think has a better chance of winning the actual primaries, right? There's a lot of reasons to read polls, but they just get so much attention.
Yeah, I think it's valuable to know what voters are thinking, who they like, what kind of qualities they're looking for in a candidate, issues they care about, stances on issues, all that kind of stuff. There's value in knowing that. But you're right, like horse race stuff, it's fine, but it's not not the best use of time.
Read some other stuff. I don't know.
We got a newsletter. Read that.
What a day. 1 year anniversary yesterday.
Yeah, a full
Happy
year old.
anniversary.
Wow, thanks.
It's the is that the Wood anniversary?
Paper.
Paper.
Whoa, for a newsletter? Cool.
Very cool.
Okay, this next one is from Christina. She wants to know what to do and how to help Democrats win in 2020 if she right now, or even maybe later, doesn't have strong, passionate feelings towards any particular candidate. She really wants a Democrat to win, really wanted it to be Hillary in 2016, but right now is like, I want anyone but Trump. What should someone in that situation be doing to help a Democrat win?
Well, boy, do we have a fund for you.
Is he looking up the name of the fund?
No, I know it's called Unify or Die, but I'm looking up the name of the website.
Go to go to votesaveamerica.com/unify.
That's what it is. Vote Save America.
votesaveamerica.com/unify, and you can donate to a fund that will go to the Democratic nominee when he or she is chosen at the convention.
So important. And it's a perfect thing for people to do right now who are just looking at all the candidates and saying, I can't decide yet. Well, you can definitely support the eventual nominee, which it sounds like this person wants to do. So, and again.
I also, another thing too, I feel as if we're about to we're about to have this big debate. And if your point of view is, I think all the candidates are pretty great and I just want to win, there's going to be a lot of people out there that they're going to think you're not getting in the fight. You need to pick a side. You need to be pretty vicious about it. But you can be kind of like bumpers on the little bowling alley that we're about to go down.
I commend you for thinking that. I mean, everyone should work really hard to figure out who is the best candidate to take on Donald Trump. It is a very, very serious decision. But we also need to make sure that we're not disqualifying anyone in the field. They're all better than Trump.
Every Little League coach needs a parent who's like, you pieces of shit, we're going to fucking get this shit together and you're going to kick that other team's ass. And then
sounds like you don't have that coach.
And then you need you need a coach that's like, I just want all the kids to have a good time. You need both coaches. You know what I mean? You need the one that's like, we're gonna rip their fucking hearts out. And you need the other one that's be like lemonade.
VoteSaveAmerica.com/unify.
God.
All right. That's it.
This next one, let's see.
Production value right now. We have the URL up.
Yep.
Sick.
It looks great. It looks great.
Very cool.
URL. Common crossword answer. Just would point out.
Oh, well, you know.
I do.
The more you know. All right. This next one is about Joe Biden. What do you guys think about his decision to wait until April to officially get into 2020? Pfeiffer's often noted that the most valuable resource in campaigns is time. Is Biden sacrificing too much by waiting? Or any of these candidates at this point?
Well, see, I do think it's different for different candidates. I think that Dan is right. Time is the most valuable asset here. And that said, every candidate has 11 months until the Iowa caucuses. So
April used to be early. This used to be
early.
This is in other countries, they don't start for a while from now. This is what we do is stupid and crazy. April used to be early. Now April's late.
It's yes. I think that for a candidate like Joe Biden, who has very high name ID, who has a staff that has been with him for a long time, who everyone knows, he can afford to wait more than other candidates who haven't jumped in by now.
Yeah, I think one pair of aviators and a motorcycle away from being ready to hit the road.
Everyone knows who Joe Biden is. He's got a whole staff in waiting, so he can probably take a little extra time. He's got a fundraising network, all that kind of stuff. I think for someone like Beto O'Rourke, who needs to put together a whole staff and hasn't run a national campaign before, like the timing issue for him is probably a little more serious. I think it's even more serious for people because Beto has some name ID as well. For the people like your Steve Bullock's, governor of Montana, your Michael Bennett's, senator from Colorado, some of the other folks who are still out there deciding whether they want to run. I do think timing matters for them even more because most people don't know who they are, and they don't have a national staff or network or anything like that. And, they're sort of losing time here.
When did Donald Trump come down that escalator?
June.
Yeah.
Came into our lives in June 2015. Yelling about Mexican rapists. That's what it was.
Ay.
And we all laughed. And here we are.
Here we are.
Dark note.
Here we are.
Anyway.
Wow, love an uplifting stream.
Hurry up and figure it out, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, this next one is
shit or get off the front runner, spot.
Oh boy.
I'm trying to think of a joke. Shit or get off the front runner pot. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Where's this going?
Thanks, Elijah.
Okay, this next one is for the people on Twitter. We have lots of people asking for you guys to talk about this DNC Fox situation with this debate. Would someone like to address what the proposal was and why this is a bad idea?
I'll just set up the context and then you can go off. This is the DNC, Democratic National Committee, is currently deciding which media outlets can host the primary debates. It's not the general debates. They don't make that decision. But just there's going to be a series of sanctioned primary debates that are sanctioned by the Democratic National Committee. Why do they need to be sanctioned by the DNC? Because otherwise, every media company in the world would say, come to our debate. There'd be too many debates. Candidates can't all pick. The DNC is going to pick the debates, who the debates are sponsored by. They've already decided that, I think NBC and CNN are going to do the first two. So they're now just trying to figure out the rest of them. And it was leaked that the DNC was at least considering a request by Fox News to host one of the primary debates. And then today they said that they would not be doing so. Thoughts, Lovett?
Turn down your volume.
Good decision. The Democratic primary should not have a debate hosted by Fox News. Now, why shouldn't they? Right? Let's answer the question why. Fox News is not just a conservative media outlet. It is not the MSNBC of the right. It is a right-wing Republican propaganda apparatus. We knew this before Jane Mayer's story in The New Yorker outlined just the various nefarious and unfair and immoral and unethical and unprecedented connections between the White House and Fox News. Bill Shine used to run Fox News. Now he runs communications for the White House. Sean Hannity has special access to the president. You can barely tell the difference between where Donald Trump's messaging and Sean Hannity's messaging begin and end. They have spent the last 2 years being on Donald Trump's side, not just elevating the caravan stories, not just elevating the more racist and bigoted messages that Donald Trump has tried to use to incite his base and win elections. But it's also about what they refuse to cover. They don't cover the scandals. They don't cover the gaffes. They don't cover the corruption. They don't cover the mistakes. They don't cover the chaos. They avoid covering the things that hurt Donald Trump, and they do it with concerted purpose to help Donald Trump and Republicans win. It is a propaganda outfit. Now, is it true that inside of that operation, there are people like Chris Wallace and Shep Smith, and maybe that's it, who are legitimate journalists who do their best inside of that organization to ask hard questions and do a reasonable job of holding both sides to some account? Of course. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because the question that we should be asking is not why doesn't Chris Wallace and Shep Smith get a turn asking questions of Democratic candidates at debate. It's how can Chris Wallace and Shep Smith consider themselves reasonable journalists and decent journalists who care about the country while working for one of the most destructive political organizations in American history. The Democratic Party has no business giving credence to Fox News. There is no excuse for it. There is no reason to do it. And there is no pundit or journalist who should guilt Democrats or suggest that somehow this makes Democrats weak or afraid to debate conservative ideas. It is absurd. It is the right decision, and we should not be afraid to call Fox News what it is just because there is a set of DC politicos who cannot admit to themselves what Fox News has become, because if you admit what Fox News is, you have to treat it differently and accept what has actually happened inside of that organization and inside of the media on the conservative side.
It's the closest thing we have in this country to state-run media. Imagine if there was a series of candidates from another party trying to take on Vladimir Putin, and they all had to have a debate on Russia TV, which is state-owned television in that country. It's the same thing. The only difference is Donald Trump doesn't own Fox News. He doesn't direct them to do anything. They just do it because they like to. They're just doing it for fun. They're carrying his water, carrying his agenda. I mean, it is a political arm of the White House messaging operation. That's what Fox News has become. And to legitimize that, or to normalize that, or to give any kind of credence to it as a party is crazy and not something that we need to do. This idea that the argument is, well, there's a lot of independent voters, even Democratic voters, who watch Fox News, so don't you want to reach those people? Yeah, if they let you stare into a camera and just talk to them directly, but you're not going to get a fair shot out of Fox News. Even Chris Wallace, even Brett Baier, even when Megyn Kelly did those debates in 16, they're asking questions that are biased and slanted towards what their conservative audience wants. That's what they do because they are a propaganda machine.
Yeah.
It's so silly. Why waste your time on it? It's also that's also not where Democrats need to be appearing to reach the voters that they need. They should be thinking about trying all kinds of different ways to reach voters, because a lot of certainly younger voters aren't watching Fox News of any political persuasion. They're on their phones. So as Democrats think about where to go to actually reach new voters, Fox News is not reaching the voters that we need to win this election.
No one is entitled to host a presidential debate. And I agree, actually. I think Chris Wallace would do a good job. I do. I like Chris Wallace. In terms of people that have asked even Republicans tough questions, he's done a good job because they think it's their home team. And then every once in a while he'll surprise you, right? He did a great job interviewing, what's his name? C+ Santa Monica fascist, Stephen Miller. All the rest. But, they are there to lend credibility to an organization that deserves none. And to me, Chris Wallace, Shep Smith, Brett Baier, I do not believe their decision to stay inside of Fox News is a defensible one. And until they reckon with that choice, they have no business moderating a Democrat debate. That's it.
Got it. Okay, so this next one is about the actual Democratic president who hopefully will get elected in 2020. Ooh. When or if, I think this person is assuming when that happens, how does this person get around Mitch McConnell and actually get things done? I'm very much interested in an aggressive approach, just as the GOP has been in furthering their interests under Trump.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the next Democratic president won't be able to do is sit down with Mitch McConnell and work something out. Because Mitch McConnell, his stated goal back in 2009 when Barack Obama took office was to make Barack Obama a one-term president. He had a strategy. It's a very now public strategy of obstructing every single thing that President Obama did, even when there was a financial crisis, even when we proposed to include tax cuts in the Recovery Act, which is what Republicans like. It's no matter what kind of conservative, moderate policy you offer them, no matter what kind of crisis we're having, Mitch McConnell has decided that the best political strategy for Republicans is to block and obstruct every single thing that a Democratic president does. There is zero reason that would change after a Democrat becomes president in 2020.
Christmas 2020, Mitch McConnell is in his sleep shirt and he puts on his hat and he takes his candle to go get a cup of soup, and there before him is a ghost of Christmas past. And over the course of that night, he's visited by 3 ghosts, each that brings him to a different part of his own life to show him the mistakes he made that led him toward a future in which he is alone, looking back on the choices he made to be political and partisan and vicious instead of caring about the American people.
The first ghost is a very high John Boehner. just got his wine goblet.
Just got a putter, putter in one hand.
The edible just kicked in, and he's like, "Let me tell you about the Republican Party."
Just eating caramel corn
from way back when we used to try to compromise with Democrats. Yeah.
Oh man.
No, so I think how do you get an agenda passed as a Democrat? So if Mitch McConnell controls the Senate, then we're in some trouble. Mitch McConnell controls the Senate, the Democrats don't have a majority, then I think the next Democratic president is going to have to figure out what executive actions that they can take.
Climate change, national emergency.
Within the confines of the law. Within the confines of the law that they can take without Congress.
I just coughed.
And beyond executive actions, I actually don't know what they can get done. They can try to, we can get the House to pass things. We can try to pressure, vulnerable Republican senators who are up in 2022 to side with the Democratic president. But I'll be honest with everyone. If we don't take back the Senate in 2020, we just take back the presidency. I don't know how the next Democratic president gets a lot done legislatively. I think you have executive actions. I think you can do plenty on foreign policy. I think you can appoint some great people to posts if you can get them through the Senate if you need to. But I don't know what you get done without a Democratic Senate. Do you?
I do not, John. It's a tough slog. Honestly, our best case scenario is still having a bare majority in the Senate in which what we're trying to do is convince moderate Democrats to go along with the most progressive version of climate legislation or healthcare legislation possible. I mean, winning is not enough. It's going to be very, very hard no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, these next one are about different policies. The first one is about immigration. So Luke Sky Waffles is asking, do Democrats do enough? Of all people, really, love it?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Okay. He's asking, do Democrats do enough to explain what a pathway to citizenship actually looks like? I think the argument for comprehensive immigration reform would be much more persuasive if politicians weren't afraid to discuss clutches pearls, details, and nuance.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I've thought about that because we used to talk about what a pathway to citizenship looks like all the time.
All the time.
When we were writing immigration speeches for Barack Obama.
All the time.
We sort of, I think partly because the hope of comprehensive immigration reform is so distant right now because Republicans control so much of Washington that we haven't talked about it. But yeah, what a pathway to citizenship looks like or would look like, at least under the comprehensive immigration reform that Barack Obama tried to pass, that passed the Senate but then died in the House because it was controlled by Republicans, it would mean if you're undocumented in this country, first of all, you can't be deported, B, unless you're a criminal, B, to get to win citizenship, to get citizenship, you would have to, we usually say, go to the back of the line, meaning that there are all kinds of legal immigrants here who are trying to become citizens, who are waiting and have been waiting for quite a long time to get their citizenship. And so you can't cut those people in line if you're undocumented. And so you have to wait for that. There's been talk about paying a fine, some kind of a fine. You have to pass a citizenship test and know enough English to pass the citizenship test. And I think that's it.
And there's a long waiting period.
There's a long waiting period. It just takes a while. And so while you're waiting, you can't get deported, but maybe you have legal status in this country, which is different between it's not quite having citizenship, but it's also not living in the shadows with the possibility of being deported.
Yeah, I mean, why has comprehensive immigration reform fallen so far out of favor from...
criminal background check too. Sorry.
Why has it fallen so far out of favor? The first big push for it came under George W. Bush. This was something that was considered a bipartisan and popular proposal, and yet I think one of the lessons of Trump, but even before Trump, is that undergirding what at a surface level is viewed as a popular set of policies, path to citizenship, border security, reforms to the legal immigration system, reforms to how we enforce immigration laws inside of the country. While kind of at the surface level, those were seen as broadly popular, there was something standing in the way of getting it through. And what we see now is beneath those polls saying that the majority of Americans wanted it was this vocal Republican base that did not want comprehensive immigration reform and was actually feeling quite disenfranchised inside of their own party and were hungry for a more nativist and nationalist Republican president, which is what they got in Donald Trump. I mean, immigration and trade were the two issues that Donald Trump made the centerpiece of his campaign. They both happened to be two issues on which there was a Democratic and Republican consensus. People like Marco Rubio, people like Reince Priebus, people like Paul Ryan, they believed in the wake of 2012 that immigration reform was one of the ways in which they were going to build a cosmopolitan Republican Party with younger voters, with urban voters. They believed it was their future. And Marco Rubio was one of the first people to realize that wasn't true, which is why he quickly abandoned that when he started running for president. So to be honest, we can explain comprehensive immigration reform. We can explain a path to legalization, path to citizenship till we're blue in the face. What we actually need to do is win some elections. I mean, and we can win them on immigration. We can win them on healthcare. We can win them on the economy. But the answer to this is more
That's
power.
the first step on a path to citizenship.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Putting Democrats in power, number one.
Yeah.
All right. This next one has been tweeted about a lot. We're jumping to it because people want to know about this new House resolution against anti-Semitism in response to Ilhan Omar and the language she used and critiques she made. This person is asking or is saying that the GOP only notices anti-Semitism from the left. Yet we acknowledge that Congresswoman Omar needs to be more cognizant of her rhetoric on the issue, but as a Jew who voted for her, I agree with the policy debate that she wants to have. How do we get back to this policy debate?
It's a great question. I would first suggest to everyone to listen to this week's Pod Save the World. Tommy and Ben do a fantastic job of talking about this on that podcast today. I mean, look, so just to what Ilhan Omar said, the quote is, "I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay to push for allegiance to a foreign country." And so what she's referring to there is the fact that AIPAC, a lobby that is very pro-Israel, tries to push people to, come out in favor of strong ties with Israel and a defense of Israel. And she says that is, and she's calling that allegiance to a foreign country. The reason that many Jewish people and many other people found that problematic is because that is the idea that Jews are have an allegiance to a foreign country or to another country or to someone else besides the country where they live and call home is, an anti-Semitic trope from years ago. It's one thing that Hitler said in Germany that the Jews stabbed the Germans in the back after World War I and weren't really loyal to Germany and stuff like that. So it is important to be careful with your language. And as Democrats, we want people to be careful with their language, whether it's engaging in anti-Semitism or racism or sexism or Islamophobia. Like that is a big thing for us. And so if someone on our side says things that aren't careful like that, even if she didn't intend it to be anti-Semitic, it's important to say, okay, that was poorly worded, I'm wrong. That said, the reaction has been, it's like, yes, it is all bad faith all the time from Republicans. Like, they do not call out the insane instances of anti-Semitism in their party, whether it's Steve King, whether it's Donald Trump, saying that there are very fine people on both sides, where there were, marchers in the streets of Charlottesville chanting, "Jews will not replace us." I mean, the examples are all over the place in the Republican Party. Like, obviously, they're bad faith, hypocritical attacks. I also don't think that the Democratic response, which is to throw a resolution on the floor about this, is really that useful, frankly.
Yeah, look, you step back from this for a second. Like, one of the reasons I think this debate is contentious and quite stupid is that it's also punditry. We're so drowning in punditry that even this is a debate about punditry. Like, don't impugn people's motives and suggest that they support Israel because they have an allegiance to a foreign government over the United States. It isn't right to say that about Jews. It wasn't right when people said that about Catholics and the fucking Pope. It's not a good thing to do. Not just because it plays into an anti-Semitic trope, though that's the most important reason, but because you're assuming people's motives. You are presuming people's motives, and you're engaged in a kind of ad hominem punditry around why people have certain views. It, A, doesn't really get you anywhere. B, it invites these bad faith attacks from Republicans. And C, it gets us nowhere closer to the actual substance of what we're trying to figure out, which is what the U.S. policy towards Israel should be when we have this we have a right-wing government empowered in Israel. We have Israel as a country that a lot of American Jews believe it is their moral obligation to support because they believe in a Jewish state. They believe that Israel as a democracy deserves to exist. They believe that the United States supporting Israel is in the U.S.'s interest, yet at the same time have legitimate, deep concerns about the way Israel behaves toward the Palestinians that deserve to be addressed. And, That incredibly complicated issue has not been helped at all by the debate we've been having about this silly resolution and this debate about this one member of Congress being attacked in bad faith, in part because Republicans are always looking for an excuse to separate Democrats from support for Israel, and because she is a Muslim woman, and Donald Trump knows that when he tweets about her, that his base fucking loves it.
We should be able to have room in this country. I think it's important to be able to put together constructive critiques of both AIPAC and Israeli policy. Especially because we are such a close ally of Israel and we send a lot of money there, we should be able to criticize their policy, and there's a lot to be critical about right now. And I think that everyone who wants to do that, Ilhan Omar included, she could be a very powerful voice on what Israel is doing wrong and the plight of the Palestinian people, which we don't talk about nearly enough in this country. And when you're in a position of power like that, all you have to do is just make sure that you choose your words carefully, right? I realize the Republicans don't do that. They don't choose their words carefully. And a lot of them, they've said all kinds of crazy shit, but we just have to be better. We just have to be better. And I guess my big thing on this is everything is blown so far out of proportion. All you need to say is choose your words better next time. That's it. Just be more careful.
I will always remember, if you go back to Donald Trump's tweets about Jon Stewart, when Jon Stewart was making fun of Donald Trump started tweeting about Jon Stewart, and he would always put a question mark next to the word Stewart, right? Because Jon Stewart's, that's his stage name, right? His real name is John. It's a Jewish last name, whatever it is. And he started putting a question mark next to Stewart. Sometimes he would use the Jewish last names. It was 100% undeniable anti-Semitism from Donald Trump. He has been exciting the anti-Semitic parts of the Republican base the entire time as he's been running. It's why he said there were very fine people on both sides. You look at his journalism around his past and the kind of anti-Semitic rhetoric he's used behind closed doors.
Called Jewish people good negotiators.
And look, I've made this offer to a lot of people at Crooked Media. If you're buying a car, bring me. Okay? But that's for me to say. That's for me to say.
Okay.
Elijah gets it.
One last one before we're into the fun ones. But this is kind of a cool question. A little bit of a...
Have fun.
Kind of a great... Yeah. You can have fun with it.
Fun.
I sat in a Jeep dealership and I said, I'm not leaving here with that thing attached to the car, because if you think I'm paying $500 for some bullshit you added on to try to get some more money out of me, it's not happening.
How'd it go?
They took it off.
Whoa.
Not me. I just go with the sticker price.
Oh, my God.
All right. This one is asking, is there something that we should be talking about more? We've been talking about a lot of things. There's been a ton of meat here. But is there an issue, something that we should be talking about more but aren't? What is the most undercovered news story or issue in this moment in time, in your opinion? Or something that you think deserves more coverage?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Still not talking about economic inequality enough. Elizabeth Warren's out there pounding the pavement on this. I know that it's a Bernie thing too. I know Kamala Harris is, her first legislative priority is the LIFT Act, which would give a tax cut to low and middle income people. So there's a lot of policies out there in the Democratic Party. Getting those policies to break through into the conversation that we have in the media, on Twitter, on cable, and getting any policy to break through is very difficult.
Yeah, I think that's right. But the Kamala Harris tax proposal is a good example of, as I think, what we actually don't talk about. That is a reasonable way to kind of try to use the tax code to make up for the concentration of wealth and the concentration of power that we've seen. But I still think what is missing is a policy debate kind of up, those are downriver answers, right? What do you do when wealth is gathering in the hands of a precious few and middle-class people don't have as much power to negotiate for themselves, either as consumers or as employees?
Automation taking over a bunch of jobs. We're still haven't figured out how to live in a global economy where you can't just, fix everything by with more trade agreements or fewer trade agreements. Right.
So to me, it's we're looking at how you deal with the symptoms, but not the actual disease. And the disease is what's allowed corporations to gain that much power. So I'm interested in that debate, right, about regulation and market-based competition and how we kind of defend ourselves against what it seems to be a natural process now in this economy of consolidation and power accruing to a few hands. I mean, that's one. Another issue that I do think is privacy and privacy on the internet. Privacy.
Didn't you hear that Mark Zuckerberg today just said that he was reorienting Facebook's mission towards privacy?
I am going to sleep like a baby tonight, knowing
How
that
exciting.
Mark
He's on the
Zuckerberg
case.
is on the case.
On
So
the
obviously,
case.
the reason that Mark Zuckerberg is starting to say these kinds of things is because they do fear regulation. I am interested in a coherent democratic vision for how to protect us as individuals from the collection of our data, the collection of our location, the collection of our personal information that has not been protected nearly well enough. Katie Porter was in a congressional hearing with I believe the CEO of Equifax, and she asked him, can I have your social security number? And of course he said, no, that would be terrible for me to say my social security number out loud. And then she's like, that's interesting because you're currently claiming in court that there was no harm done when you leaked 140 million social security numbers. You're claiming that no one received any damage from that. So we have created the situation in which companies can A, collect a huge amount of information, and B, not be held accountable when they don't protect it well enough, and C, we as individual consumers have no real sort of simple practical access to knowing what's collected about us, how to delete it, how to control it. And I think figuring that out is a really big question that I think will be on a lot of people's minds moving forward.
And I will say, even though there has been a lot of discussion and debate around the Green New Deal lately, it has mainly focused on, farting cows and, Republican attacks about getting rid of all fucking airplanes and all this bullshit. I still think we are not talking enough about, and Democratic candidates aren't talking enough about, with the exception of Jay Inslee, who's basing his entire campaign on it, climate change. I mean, I just listened to Chris Hayes' pod with David Wallace Wells, who just wrote The Uninhabitable Earth, and it is fucking terrifying. Listening to it gives you an existential angst about what is going to happen to this planet in a very short time, in a time that we're still going to be alive, and our children, if we have children, are going to be alive. Certainly,
John,
it's
you know
very
my
scary.
position.
What's your position?
We got to get it out of the air. We got to get up there. All right, we got to get
Looking
that
for a
carbon,
shortcut over here.
and we got to take it out of the air. You're damn right. I'm looking for a shortcut. This is America. All right, and there is no problem we can't let fester for way too long before we find a shortcut. Shortcut. That's a slogan.
We can also do what we need to do to reduce carbon emissions with the technology we have today.
When's the last time America did that? Did what we had to do in advance.
All right, no, we'll just bet that some scientist out there is going to figure out.
We got to get it out of the
all right,
air.
That's it.
We're going to get it out of
roll
there.
the dice, and if that works, great.
Think
if it
about
doesn't,
it.
we're
Think
fucked.
about it. Listen, I'm not happy about it. It's not what I want. All right, I'm just saying, got to get it out of the air.
All right, cool. And now to the fun stuff.
Oh, okay, cool.
This first one, I think, might be for you, John, not you, John. This is about the fence jump. I just want to know your thoughts now that we've gotten to this pivotal moment in the Bachelor franchise. What did you think? Did it live up to the hype?
I'm gonna do a crossword.
I think this show is setting back the cause of humanity. I mean, what was that? The episode last night.
I didn't watch Women Tell All.
Women
so
Tell All was.
I heard it was wild.
It was not a great moment.
Really?
Yeah. So Colton, the Bachelor,
No crossword? Love it?
gets really upset because the woman.
Are we
he has
we're
fallen.
spoiler alert, you guys.
I don't. Did
whatever.
people watch The Bachelor that much later?
I mean, people are
Anyway, Colton's really upset about something, and he tries to escape.
he tries
from
to
the set.
leave
He
the
jumps a
franchise
fence.
in the middle of
And
Portugal. It's crazy.
Chris Harrison.
I love that. I just found out from that aside that they're in Portugal.
They always
And
go somewhere.
Chris Harrison comes out after he jumps over the fence and just starts going, "What the fuck?" And he starts bleeping out. Chris
He breaks into a trot. It's
Suddenly,
great TV.
Suddenly,
Listen.
a personality breaks out.
Listen,
Chris
listen.
Well,
You know
he's
what I
furious
say about
that
Chris
he has to do
Harrison?
I was telling the office what you said about Chris
that
Harrison.
Chris
Why don't you tell the live stream?
Chris Harrison cannot fall asleep unless there is a loaded gun in his mouth. I'm sorry. That is you can just see, I mean, what a life. That is the only way he feels safe.
What does it mean? We don't.
All right.
You know what it means.
More TV questions. We want to know what your reactions are to the new Game of Thrones trailer. Thoughts?
Oh, I'm
comments?
so excited. But I'm so upset that we have scheduled tours on the night of the premiere and the night of the finale.
We got to
What are
figure
you
that out.
doing?
We got to
What?
figure it out. We're going to figure it out. All right? We're going to figure it out.
Your live show is just going to be you
calling
guys
Kevin.
watching all together.
We got to figure out my ideal scenario, all right, is that we do a Pod Save America live show. We talk about the news. Trump bad, end show's over.
Maybe like hurry it up a little bit. We
Trump
get he's
bad, Trump bad,
Yeah,
Trump bad, Trump
Democrats
bad,
need to win. Done.
Trump bad, impeach, but also focus on the issues. End of it. Then we go right to everybody shut the fuck up. All right, go to the bathroom, get a soda, get a cocktail, and then we're going to all watch it at the anthem. We're going to watch
That's
Game of Thrones.
great.
We got to figure out if it's possible. I don't know if it is. We're going to work on it.
That'd be
Okay?
fun.
Now, I've also started watching Game of Thrones from the very beginning, and I don't know if I'll be able to get through them all.
I'm gonna go. Emily and I decided we're going back 2 seasons.
Cowards. You start at the top. You start at the very top. Why is that camera not on me? You start at the very top.
Pornar. Okay.
I want to clip just that. And just have it as like a little clip that we
That's
send
the
around.
bit.
Two shot for most.
Great.
Why is that camera?
Why is that camera not on me? Why is
Anyway,
that
we
camera?
got dragons in the trailer. We got Jon and Daenerys walking towards the dragons. Like maybe Jon will finally ride one of the dragons.
I love hearing people talk about this show because it just sounds so fucking crazy.
Oh, because you haven't.
No, I don't watch it.
You know what, Priyanka? Don't come at us having watched The Bachelor in Portugal and then be like, Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
what's
you
it
thought
all
it was cool
about?
when
Give
you
me a
fucking-
break.
Wasn't
Give
saying
me
that
a
it's
break.
You
crazy.
want a real wall to jump over? We'll
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
Game of
You want
Thrones.
to talk about?
Oh, no, I thought you
you
were
want to talk
defending
about a
The
wall that
Bachelor.
Mexico's not going to pay for.
That was a very athletic
You know what
jump,
I mean?
though.
It was an athletic jump.
It was
We're
like,
going to build a wall, and the White Walkers are going to.
And the wildlings will pay for it.
all right. Okay. Last question. How did each of your dogs get their names?
Well,
Oh, here he is.
pundits is sort of self-explanatory, no?
I mean, I just was looking for a name that I thought would do the best on socials.
That's right. Leo, born in August, looks like a little lion, so we called him Leo.
Easy.
That
Do we
was
know
it.
the story behind Luca?
I don't know the story behind Luca.
I don't.
People do want to know also
Tommy
that
will tweet it
if
at
your dogs will now get cute rain gear because Luca has cute rain gear. That's been on Twitter.
I mean, that's a great question. I'm sure Emily will have seen Tommy's tweet and have already purchased the rain gear by the time we're done with
Does
it.
Pundit brave the elements? She doesn't need rain gear.
Pundit's not getting anything. Pundit's going to get wet. She's going to shake it off like a fucking dog.
All right. Amazing. End of stream.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll be back next Wednesday.
Bye, guys.